New numbers showing local hotels aren't seeing the surge they expected for this year's World Cup. FIFA promised billions for the region, but some say the Cup is looking more like a bust.
For the hotel industry is already struggling, and this certainly does not help. Business owners thought this was going to be a moneymaker, but now they're seeing the opposite. Shakira dancing her way into the new FIFA World Cup anthem that dropped today as excitement builds for the tournament. But some people say the expected tourism boom is losing its rhythm.
5 million tickets sold, over 500 million ticket requests, a projected $30 billion economic boom for the United States. FIFA called the 2026 World Cup the largest sporting event in human history. So why are hotel rooms sitting empty across 11 American cities? Welcome back to Global Sketchy Era, and today, we are pulling apart the numbers behind what might be the biggest gap between hype and reality in sports history. Let's set the stage first, because the ambition here was genuinely historic. The 2026 FIFA World Cup runs from June 11th to July 19th, spanning 3 countries the United States, Canada, and Mexico across 16 host cities. For the first time ever, 48 teams are competing, up from the usual 32. That expansion alone added 40 extra matches, bringing the total to a record 100 for games. In the United States alone, 78 of those matches are being played across 11 cities: Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, and New Jersey, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Seattle. FIFA's own economic impact analysis, released in March 2025, projected that the tournament would contribute $80.1 billion to global GDP. For the United States specifically, the projected economic output sits at $30.5 billion with $10.2 billion in labor income and the creation of 185,000 full-time equivalent jobs. A joint FIFA and World Trade Organization study projected that global direct visitor spending alone would hit $13.9 billion, with around 824,000 jobs created worldwide. And the ticket demand, truly unprecedented. Over 500 million requests for tickets were received. More than 5 million tickets have already been sold. On paper, this looked like an economic miracle waiting to happen. So what went wrong? Here's where the data starts telling a very different story. In early May 2026, just weeks before kickoff, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, or AHLA, released its FIFA World Cup 2026 Hotel Outlook report. They surveyed hotels across all 11 American host cities, and the results were alarming. Nearly 80% of hotels reported that their bookings were tracking well below their initial forecasts. Let that sink in. 8 out of 10 hotels, across 11 different cities, are underperforming compared to what they expected when they signed up to be part of the biggest sporting event in history. And it gets more specific when you zoom into individual cities. In Kansas City, between 85 and 90% of surveyed hotels are reporting bookings below expectations. Some properties are actually performing worse than a completely ordinary summer, with no major event at all. The city hosting World Cup matches is seeing fewer guests than it would on a random Tuesday in July. That is not a slowdown. That is a collapse of projected demand. In Boston, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Seattle, the AHLA report described the tournament so far as E-Euro, and this is their language: E-Euro, a non-event. Cities that spent years preparing, marketing, and investing for this moment are using the word non-event. Only about 25 to 30% of host markets are seeing any meaningful gains, tied directly to the World Cup, according to the AHLA data. The majority are either flat or below the normal summer baselines for New York and Los Angeles. The picture is slightly better. Europe bookings are roughly in line with typical summer demand, meaning the World Cup is adding almost nothing on top. A tournament of this scale should be producing extraordinary results, not ordinary ones. Meanwhile, Miami and Atlanta are outliers. Two of a few cities actually reporting bookings that exceeded their expectations, but they are the exception that highlights how bad things are everywhere else. The AHLA was clear about what this means. Their president, Rosanna Maeda, put it directly: the expected demand, despite 5 million tickets sold, has not translated into strong hotel bookings. Here is something that almost nobody is talking about e-Euro: how hotels got tricked by their own optimism. When FIFA awarded this tournament, they reserved massive blocks of hotel rooms across all host cities. These blocks were meant for FIFA staff, media, sponsors, technical teams, and official delegations. Hotels saw those reservations on the books early and assumed the event would be sold out. Some thought they were essentially guaranteed a windfall. Then FIFA released most of those room blocks back onto the open market. Reports indicate that roughly half of all respondents in the AHLA survey experienced significant room releases return to the general market. The New York Post reported that FIFA released around 70% of its hotel room blocks. What this created is what the AHLA called an artificial early demand signal. Hotels build their pricing and revenue forecast around inventory that was never going to translate into paying guests. When FIFA handed those rooms back, hotels suddenly had far more supply than actual demand e-Euro and prices they had set for a boom. That was not coming, so the hotels raised rates expecting a surge. The surge did not arrive, and now they are stuck between empty rooms and prices too high to attract the visitors who might otherwise book. Even if you want to attend, can you actually afford it? This is where the tournament's fundamental tension becomes clearest. FIFA received over 500 million ticket requests, which sounds like overwhelming demand. But the people requesting tickets and the people who can actually afford them are increasingly to different groups. A basic ticket to see the United States opener costs over $4,000 on the resale market. A seat at a semifinal in Dallas starts at $11,000. And if you want to be in the stadium for the final, the average resale price has surpassed $16,000 per ticket. According to a detailed financial analysis, attending a single U.S. match cost an average of $5 for $140 per person before you factor in accommodation or airfare. For international fans, who were the primary economic engine this tournament was supposed to unleash, a complete trip to the United States for the World Cup can run well into 5 figures e-Euro, easily $20,000 to $30,000 per person, once you account for flights, hotels, and transportation. As the executive director of the UNT Sports Innovation Space, Bob here put it: e-Euro for international travelers. These ticket prices are quite high and quite shocking. Many are deciding they would rather watch at home, and this matters enormously for the economics of the tournament. Because international visitors are not just fans e-Euro, they are the highest spending travelers. They stay longer, they visit more attractions, they eat at more restaurants. The AHLA specifically noted that international visitors are a key driver of projected economic impact for host cities. If they do not come, domestic fans e-Euro who tend to drive in for game day and go home e-Euro simply cannot replace that spending. Now we get to what many analysts are calling the most consequential factor of all e-Euro.
What are the specific actions you would want FIFA or host cities to take to protect the safety of immigrant communities and traveling fans? These are real risks, and they are real risks that FIFA has failed to mitigate in the past, even though they forgot the risk.
FIFA and the United States authorities must ensure that the World Cup does not become a pretext for stifling dissent or expanding mass surveillance. Every player, fan, journalist, and resident has the right to participate and protest without fear of sanction, arbitrary detention, or any sort of discriminatory treatment, and in this case also of deportation.
Working people care that FIFA will uphold strong worker rights protections. We want the games to be successful in the United States.
The Trump administration actions threaten our neighbors and tourists alike. And FIFA has unique leverage to push for change, not to whitewash and capitulate. This is why more than 90 civil society organizations, including labor groups, as Jennifer mentioned, including the ACLU, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and NAACP, have already sent a letter urging FIFA to act. but sadly we have not yet to see meaningful assurances. On the contrary, we are only seeing further escalation from the administration with deployment of the National Guard, especially in host cities like LA and Chicago. This tournament should be about celebrating unity and our connection to the world. And without action today, FIFA risks becoming a stage for authoritarianism.
As you may know, asylum seekers, once you arrive in the United States, you have a right to seek asylum. You have a right to go before the judge and make a case.
With FIFA coming into North America, the United States in particular, $14 billion plus of revenue, if the funding giant that FIFA is not using that to make sure that the values of embracing communities, making sure that policies and practices are embedded in due process, if those things are not being pushed to the forefront, then it does become very political.
The immigration and visa environment surrounding this tournament died in June 2025. The Trump administration issued a proclamation restricting entry for nationals from 19 countries, primarily in the Middle East and Africa. By December 2025, that list had expanded to 39 nations. Fans from those countries are largely unable to attend any World Cup matches on American soil, unless they had obtained visas before those bans took effect. Of the 48 nations that qualified for the tournament, fans from for Cote d'Ivoire, Haiti, Iran, and Senegal are directly subject to travel bans. Haiti qualified for the World Cup for the first time in over 50 years. Their fans cannot come. There's also a visa bond program that was expanded by the U.S. State Department in April 2026, requiring citizens from 50 countries to pay a bond of up to $15, zero before being allowed to visit the United States for tourism.
It should be translating into increased rates, but you can't increase rates that high because you're going to scare people away.
5 World Cup qualified nations Algeria, Cabo Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, and Tunisia are affected by this requirement. For everyone else, the process is not much smoother. About 65% of hotels in the AHLA survey cited visa barriers and broader geopolitical concerns as factors suppressing international demand. Not minor inconveniences, significant structural barriers. FIFA introduced a system called the FIFA Pass, which allows ticket holders to receive priority scheduling for U.S. visa interview appointments. But the FIFA Pass does not guarantee a visa. All applicants still go through the same full vetting process. And with U.S. Customs and Border Protection searching traveler phones at an increasing rate more than 55,000 device searches in fiscal year 2025 alone Many international fans are weighing whether the experience of simply arriving in America is worth the risk. More than 120 civil society organizations, including the ACLU, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the NAACP, signed a travel advisory warning that fans, players, and journalists attending the World Cup should be aware of risks including arbitrary denial of entry, arrest, detention, deportation, expanded travel restrictions, invasive social media screening, racial profiling, and suppression of speech and protest. Jennifer Lee, who leads Dignity 2026, a national coalition working with grassroots groups across host cities, described the situation this way: the specter of immigration enforcement has become the leading concern among grassroots organizations across host cities. With less than 2 months until kickoff at the time of her statement, there had still been no public commitments from FIFA or host city organizers about plans to protect residents, visitors, or workers. The U.S. Travel Association itself condemned campaigns that were undermining confidence in travel to the United States ahead of the World Cup, and the AHLA's own president said that for the tournament to reach its potential, the U.S. and FIFA must ensure a welcoming and seamless experience for international travelers which means, implicitly, that they currently do not have one. The hotel crisis around the World Cup does not exist in isolation. It is part of a broader, measurable collapse in international tourism to the United States. Back in March 2025, a formal report projected that international tourism to the U.S. would increase 6.5% in 2025, followed by another 10% increase in 2026 as the World Cup brought visitors from around the world. Neither projection materialized. Congressional hearings in 2026 showed charts drawn from actual Department of Commerce data. Euro not projections, but real numbers euro showing tourism declining instead of growing. While the government had forecast a 6% rise, the actual trajectory was negative. The data was presented publicly and drew bipartisan attention, with multiple lawmakers expressing concern that the United States was losing its position as an appealing destination for international visitors precisely as it was hosting the world's biggest sporting event. Analysts project that around 1.24 million international visitors will travel, specifically to the United States for the tournament. That sounds significant, but for a country expecting a historic tourism surge, around the 250th anniversary of American independence era, which also falls this summer era, the numbers represent a fraction of what was promised. To be fair, FIFA pushes back on this narrative strongly. The organization has consistently described demand for the 2026 World Cup as unprecedented. They point to the 500 million ticket requests and the more than 5 million tickets sold as evidence that interest in the tournament is genuinely historic. They argue that the prices simply reflect what premium American sports events cost, and that nothing about what is happening is unusual for a tournament of this scale. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has largely dismissed concerns about the tourism and hotel situation, maintaining publicly that the event will be a massive success. The organization also said that a clearer picture of actual attendance and spending will only emerge closer to the tournament era, meaning some of the pessimism may be premature, and there are legitimate counter-arguments. Some hotels are seeing last-minute booking surges. Cities like Miami and Atlanta are exceeding their expectations. And the fundamental reality is that 78 matches will still be played, stadiums are expected to fill, and billions of people will watch globally. But the gap between what was promised and what the data shows, right now, with the tournament weeks away, is undeniable. So here is where we land. The 2026 FIFA World Cup was supposed to be an economic revelation for the United States. Euro $30.5 billion in output, 185,000 jobs, a historic tourism surge, and a moment of global unity hosted on American soil. What we are seeing instead is a tournament where 80% of hotels across 11 host cities are underperforming, where cities like Kansas City are seeing demand worse than a normal summer, where for qualifying nations cannot send their fans due to travel bans, where 65% of the hospitality industry cites visa barriers and geopolitical concerns as reasons international visitors are staying away, where more than 120 organizations have issued formal travel warnings about the risks of coming to America. The stadiums will likely be full. 5 million tickets were sold, but full stadiums filled primarily with domestic day trippers who drive in, watch a game, and leave do not generate the hotel stays, restaurant meals, tourist spending, and extended visits that were the foundation of the $30 billion projection. The gap between the hype and the reality is not just a story about one soccer tournament. It is a data point about the relationship between immigration policy, geopolitical reputation, and economic outcomes. When the world does not feel welcomed, the world does not show up. And that is a $30 billion lesson playing out in real time. That is the full breakdown for you here on Global Sketch. If you found this analysis valuable, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We cover the stories behind the numbers that most people miss. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the World Cup will deliver on its economic promise? Or is the damage already done? We read every single comment. See you in the next one.